This is the Shaver Prep Football Podcast, episode 23, and today I'm at Training Haus on the Minnesota Vikings campus in Eagan. This show presented by Aquarius Home Services and brought to you by True Stone Financial and Culver's. And I'll name our Culver's Player of the Week in just a minute. This is Training Haus, powered by Twin Cities Orthopedics, a one-stop shop for sports performance and recovery, where athletes of all ages, all abilities, and all sports come to be the best they can be. And leading their sports performance is one of the top coaches in the game. For over 30 years, Bill Welle has helped athletes get drafted, get noticed, and get better. From last year's number 5 draft pick, Joe Alt, to Hall of Famers like Chris Carter and Randy Moss, Bill has trained over 800 players, including 40 plus first-round picks. Whether you're from a small college and want to land with a team as an undrafted free agent, to training the best players in the country, Welle's NFL Combine Prep program has everything an athlete needs to reach their goals, all under one roof. And Bill joins me now. Let's talk about the young players who are thinking about lifting weights for the first time. 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade, 9th grade. What are some of the things they should be thinking about? And on top of that, the coaches should be watching for and the parents should be paying attention to.
It's kind of predicated by where they are at as far as puberty. It's a wide gap, right? You have 13-year-olds that are at a different level than other 13-year-olds. One of the things that I really try to stress, especially with the younger athletes, the middle school kids, is get involved with something that you're working on technique and form to start. If you learn how to jump, if you learn how to land, if you learn how to even just body weight squat, you're doing it in the proper mechanics that then you can start to add weight. The problem is it needs to be kind of in a supervised scenario, because 9 times out of 10, you end up in a gym with your buddies and I'm going to try to lift what you're lifting. And we don't want that, right? These kids should not have heavy weight on their back at a young age. They should be able to control their body weight, do something maybe with a hex bar or a dumbbell or dumbbells and work on more specific pieces to build up the body versus heavy squats, heavy bench. Like, do things that are independent. I'm more of a functional type trainer, so I kind of lean towards more of a can I move the weight and stay in different angles and move it properly? And that's going to, long term, that's going to be beneficial.
One of the things when a guy starts to lift and he's with his buddies is he can be intimidated, right? Or talked into some things that maybe he's not ready for. How do you get around that? How do you handle that, Bill? Because that's a real thing for young athletes.
Yeah. Most schools now have a strength coach in their weight rooms. Use them as a reference or as a resource, actually, of what should I be doing, what can I do, and how would this be beneficial? That's where I would lean. Or if you're a parent, reach out to some individuals that have had experience. You have parents that have probably a junior or senior that have done this before. Yeah. What was your experience and what did you find that worked or didn't work, and start with that process?
Let's talk about the football players who have established themselves in the weight room to some extent. What are the things that they need to think about now in the offseason for football to get themselves ready to play next fall?
What these athletes need to think about is, one, I tell this to my NFL Combine athletes, tell this to our pro athletes. Chris Carter never caught a ball in the offseason. When I trained him, he worked on his speed. Figure out what your weaknesses are and work on those things. So I would talk to a football coach and say, hey, coach, I really want to get better. What do I need to work on? What do you think I need to work on? Oh, you need to work on your strength. You need to work on your foot quickness. Take that into consideration and then start researching on your own. Like, what could I do to make myself better? And then being specific about when they go to these camps, they're going to have to run a 40. They're going to have to run a short shuttle and an L drill or a vertical jump, broad jump. There's techniques to this that people don't understand. There's a combine this last Sunday that one of our staff went to help out. He's an offensive lineman, played in the NFL, and he was like, Bill, I can't believe the number of kids that didn't know what they were doing.
Wow.
Well, if you don't know what you're doing and you're putting up bad technique, that affects your numbers. Now, when you look across the board, schools are looking at colleges, et cetera. They're looking at these numbers and saying, all right, here's Johnny. He's 6 foot. He was 210 pounds. He ran a 5.25. But Steve, 6 foot, 215, same position. He just ran a 4.9. Who am I leaning towards? Yeah. I don't know anything about the kid on the football side of realm, right? But here's a number, and that's what I tell these kids: don't give a coach an opportunity to take you off a list. Make sure that you're optimizing those things. And those are the pieces that, that's one of the things I've done for 30 some years now, is that NFL combine prep side, high school combine prep. We do it so that we narrow it down so that we work on the specifics of those specific drills so that you put up good numbers. And that's always been my motivation, especially here in Minnesota. We have really good athletes here that just don't tap into what they need to tap into. They just, as an athlete, just go out and try to do it.
Are there certain lifts, certain things that they should be thinking about to get them football ready, besides the numbers that you're talking about?
From a strength perspective, anything that they can do to build up the entire body, right? So yes, a squat or a version of a squat, but again, with your young athletes, I'm not big on putting weight on their back. I would rather you do a dumbbell squat or a sumo squat or a goblet squat where it's a dumbbell, but you're still doing the movement, but you don't have that extra weight. You're a growing athlete, especially young athletes where the bones grow faster than everything else, and you've got these little gaps that your body doesn't know what to do with, and then you try to compensate. So I would definitely have a version of a squat. I'm a big proponent, back to, again, the functional side of things. While you could bench, that's a piece, but doing it with, in my opinion, dumbbells and changing the angles in which you're doing a press, that's going to be football. I'm not always going to block here. I'm going to be in different angles, and can I get that stabilization to lock myself in? Gotcha. And core. Core is a big one. Yeah. And a lot of kids they'll skip the core side. And that's why a lot of football players, I recommend that they wrestle so that they understand body and positioning and how to move. So those are those big things. And then, from the speed perspective, trying to work on footwork, how, can I work on becoming faster? What does that look like? So those components.
So those are all the things that you should do. What about the things you shouldn't do? What are some things that you say, oh gosh, don't do that maybe is out there that people do?
For the young athletes, I'll say the back squat is the one that freaks me out the most. That's the one that, the risk versus reward, there's other things that you could be doing. Yeah. I don't want to throw shade at like a program like a Bigger, Faster, Stronger. There's benefits to a Bigger, Faster, Stronger, but there's also exercises that you could do that are less risky, especially with your younger athlete. Olympic lifts. If you haven't done Olympic lifts, you need to learn how to do the movement before you get involved in it. And so starting with weight on a clean, an athlete that doesn't understand the technique is going to ask something else to contract within the body. And now, again, risk versus reward. We see it all the time with TCO. We have athletes that come in with these injuries that shouldn't happen in the weight room. You should never get injured in the weight room. It's supposed to be preventative.
Yeah. When I interview young athletes and they talk about a progression from junior year to senior year, whatever, they put on good weight. What is, in your mind, good weight?
Getting the body structurally sound and putting on muscle that's functional muscle. It's not just putting on weight to put on weight. Yeah. So increasing your protein intake, especially after workouts. Meeting with a dietitian is super beneficial because now you can figure out, where do I need to be if I want to gain? Where do I want to be if I need to maintain?
Do you get coaches that contact you, that ask you these things? Is there a resource that kids or coaches can go to read about how to build good weight in athletes?
Do I get coaches that call? Yes. Yeah. Do I get parents that call? All the time. All the time. So yeah, there's all kinds of information on the interwebs, but you have to kind of take some of that stuff with a grain of salt too. and run it by other people. Hey, I think I'm about doing this. I would contact a dietitian that's reputable and knows sport, not just a nutritionist, a dietitian that knows sport.
What you put in your body is what you're going to get out of it.
Absolutely.
Talk a little bit about that part of it, because you're talking about 16, 17, 18-year-old kids who aren't necessarily always eating their vegetables, right? Or aren't always on a diet that works for them across the board. What would you say?
That's always the hardest part. Yeah. And honestly, I would say it's probably 60 to 70% of what happens to the body is on the nutritional side. Because we always use this analogy. If you were to build the ultimate athlete, what would it comprise? Yeah. You have strength, speed, agility, quickness, balance, all those pieces, right? Well, then you have the mental side. You have the nutrition side, right? So all of the stuff that the mental side is going to affect all the physical. The nutrition side is going to affect all the physical. The recovery side is going to affect all the physical. And 90% of the kids just work on the physical and don't worry about the other three that are going to make a big difference. If you're not getting enough sleep and recovery, and dietarily, with really good athletes, I really recommend taking some sort of protein in the evenings before they go to bed, because that's when the repair happens. Well, you have a kid that's on his phone until 2 o'clock in the morning or gaming until 3 in the morning. They go to school and then feel like they're not hungry. So you've just taken this engine that is looking for energy or fuel, and there's nothing to get it from. Well, it's going to take it from the muscle. So now you're depriving what you just built up on the physical, you're actually taking away because you didn't eat, or you didn't eat properly. Right. You didn't give it the sustenance that it needs. So yeah, it's a huge part.
For the last 5 years, the House has hosted the high school football combine, which has been very successful. Talk a little bit about that and why that's important, not only for you guys, but also for the players.
We've had anywhere from 200 to 250 athletes come in from the Midwest, not just from the Twin Cities. And when you've got over 30 colleges attending, you're going to get some exposure. You're going to get some awareness. We host it here at Minnesota Vikings campus, and it's lasers. It's legit. It's not hand time for 40s. And we have coaches. I had a coach yesterday from Mankato that asked, hey, can I get the results? Because we want to use this as our recruiting piece. Yeah. They're keeping an eye on. And we've got 8th graders. Again, the earlier I can get numbers out and you stand out, somebody's going to take a look. And that's, the squeaky cog gets the oil. That's what has to happen. You got to put yourself out there. You can't expect teams to be like, hey, I'm going to go look for such and such at Dassel Cokato. Well, it looked out that Eli is now at Montana State, right? The running back. I trained him. His mom sent me a note. He's like, thank you so much for what you guys did. Were it not for you guys helping him get exposure, he wouldn't be where he's at. That's motivation for me. And that's what's nice about our combine is we have pro athletes, former pro athletes that come and help instruct and teach how you should be doing technique and form positionally. And at the same time, the Minnesota Football Coaches Association hosts their college fair. So if I'm a college coach, I can meet with your head football coach and say, hey, what's going on with Johnny? Yeah. Is he really that good? Is he and so there's an interaction where they're going to meet with their football coach as well as get to see him on the field.
The landscape has changed so much across the board in football, whether it's college, even in high school, as you're talking about now. It never used to be that way, but now if you want the opportunity, it's there, but you have to be ready for that opportunity.
Correct.
You have to do the work to be ready.
You have to put yourself out there, for sure. And a lot of times, it's getting much better, even with a huddle, right? And creating a huddle profile. A lot of kids will put all their highlight stuff. Yeah, you have to do that, but you got to capture a coach within the first 30 seconds. Because think about the number of high school kids that are coming out next year to play college football. You got to capture my attention and say, hey, I want to see this kid again.
Does it change your job a little bit too? Because, it used to be just train train, but now you're kind of more of a, you're kind of putting people out there too. You're exposing kids to all of these opportunities.
No, it definitely has changed. I mean,
Yeah.
over 30 years, it was literally go out, do my job, the physical side, and then I'm done.
Yeah.
And now
Not
it's
anymore.
No, when we, especially like with our NFL Combine stuff, we have guys that I've got to manage their medical side, I've got to manage the nutrition side, I've got to manage their media side, their interview prep, and then the physical on top of that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a lot, but I love it.
I know you do.
It's awesome.
Thanks for doing this.
Thank you.
I appreciate it very much. To be honest, I'm a trust guy. If I'm going to let you into my home to repair or upgrade something, I'm going to trust you do it right and provide great customer service for peace of mind. Well, Aquarius Home Services was all that and more. They installed a new Connecticut water system in my home, great drinking water from my faucet, by the way, and an air purification system, so no more dust in my home. It's been a game changer. Quality, service, trustworthy people. Aquarius Home Services, earning the right to be recommended. These days, you can get a checking account, a credit card, or a mortgage just about anywhere. But what you can't always find is the personal touch of a neighborhood credit union like True Stone Financial. I've known the folks over at True Stone for years. They put people first. They take time with you, they get to know you, and they use their expertise to connect you with services that help you achieve financial well-being. True Stone is a not-for-profit financial institution owned by the very people they serve, and they're in your neighborhood. Visit truestone.org and get to know them, and they can't wait to get to know you too. True Stone is an equal housing opportunity lender. Erich Martens is the executive director of the Minnesota State High School League, and I thought it'd be a great way to wrap up my season of podcasts for high school football, then have the man in charge and talk a little bit about high school football. Thanks for doing this. I appreciate it. Let's start with the Prep Bowl because it was before Thanksgiving, which is a little unusual. How did it go attendance-wise? What did it look like? And did it play well as the last weekend for high school football?
Yeah, I think it plays really, really well. Our entire football community, as well as the state of Minnesota, kind of sets their calendars by what we do. And so when we are not on Thanksgiving weekend, it's a little bit of a surprise, but it does function really well for us in that case. We actually have a little bit less competition probably from outside interests from that perspective. And our schools do like the rhythm of staying week after week. And in this case, we would have had to create a gap week if we were going to put semifinals where they typically go and then stretch out to get to Thanksgiving weekend. So from that standpoint, the arrangement, I think our schools appreciate that and that consistency. For us, it goes really well also. Staff, et cetera, are all on. We're not getting into people's holiday time. And our fans do really well as well. We were super fortunate all season long with outstanding weather. And it really went right through quarterfinals. Our quarterfinal attendance was strong, and that was great to see. And then semifinals and finals there. So the Prep Bowl, I think, played really well. And the one thing you can never complain about is the weather at US Bank. And it really comes down to who plays football well on really pristine conditions, and everything's really guaranteed in that situation. So, no, it's gone well, and really pleased with how things happened there.
And you guys have a partnership with the Vikings. You have to work with them in order to be able to use that stadium. When I talked to Bob Madison earlier this year, there was the discussion that maybe even next season, the Prep Bowl would be before Thanksgiving. Is that, I mean, you're kind of at their mercy, aren't you? You're kind of at the NFL schedule mercy. How do you think it plays out for next year? Do you have an idea?
Yeah, so from a schedule perspective, very much the same as this year. So the reason that it's a week earlier ahead of Thanksgiving is because there's an additional week between Labor Day and Thanksgiving. We've always gone into every football season knowing that we might have to flex one direction or another, even around Thanksgiving when the Vikings, have played on a Thanksgiving day or something like that. That's unique kinds of requests, and we might have to adjust in that way. But right now, our schedule would predict that we would be the same as this year was. that we would be the week before Thanksgiving. We have to wait until the NFL season gets determined, and other entities beyond the Vikings even create that schedule, and then we work with them. And then you add in the complexity of the flex games and who might move
Right.
from a afternoon to an evening, or who might be flexed onto Monday night, those things. But the Vikings have been great to work with. They have a great interest in high school football as well, and they're highly supportive. We're at the table with them on a regular basis and just really appreciate our partnership with them.
So when you evaluate something like the Prep Bowl and you look at maybe areas that you can improve on to make the fan experience better, make the players experience better, what do you come away with? What are some of the things that you guys talk about?
We always talk about, the access for the fans and how that works out. And it's not a secret for those who've attended that the home side creates some challenges based on the unique seating arrangement. So what we saw this year was a slight adjustment in schedule to take maybe some bigger crowds from being back to back and overlapping one another. So an adjustment in that. And then in our last game of the tournament each evening with our biggest classes, we did some reserve seating on that side. So people knew whether or not they were going to get into those sections. They didn't have to wait in line. If you were a general admission customer, you could go right in and sit down. So spectators do matter to us, and we try to make sure that is something that works as well as possible. We always take a look at broadcast because that reaches a whole nother group of our community, and we want to make sure that's as good as possible there. 45 TV works with us really directly, feature stories and important aspects to cover. And then when it comes to the students and the teams that participate, how do we take care of them? How do we put them in a good place to be successful and have access? And the number of teams that come out and just say, thanks so much for everything you do, and know that it's the U.S. Bank team as well as our staff that really work hard to make that be a great experience. And, unfortunately, it's smiles and tears at the end of the games every time. But in the end, when they look back at it, it's our goal to say, hey, that's a 1 in a million experience, and we're so glad we had a chance to do it.
Let's talk about football in general. How safe would you say high school football, at least from my perspective, it looks much safer. It looks like all the coaches have bought into all the concussion protocols, to all the practice requirements that are asked of them. How would you describe the safety issue for Minnesota high school football?
I think safe is always in everybody's own mindset. But
Yep.
what I would say from our perspective is it's safer than it's ever been. And that, as you mentioned, the protocols and the expectations that are there from the start of the season all the way through the contest through to the end, number of quarters, how you get acclimated to contact and make sure and get your body ready for that. Our officials are better trained to address those kinds of issues, and not only just throwing the flag, but proactively interacting with the players on the field to say, hey, we got to watch that. That one's really close. We want to make sure to take care of everybody. Those hits that are unnecessary or not even a natural part just need to absolutely be eliminated. And I think we've done a really good job within that. I do believe, like I said, it continues to get safer and safer. I'm wearing a sports medicine, sweater here, and they have a big part in keeping things safe, right? From concussion and return to play protocols, not just for concussion, but even for other injuries, right? At times we've always been taught, maybe you and I, that you got to tough it out, right? And just get past it. And really that has changed. Let's get you good and healthy. Then when you're ready to go back in and you can compete in a safe way, because we know we're safer when we're at full speed and have all our faculties about us and abilities. And so I do think that it's continued work, but we're seeing a lot of things that are going in the right direction. And our tournaments were a great example of that.
I think it's a fair statement that if the game is safe, then the game also is healthy. And it looks that way to me, that the game of football in Minnesota is healthy. It looks like the numbers are getting better. It looks like across the board, football is flourishing in Minnesota. Would you agree?
Incredible appetite. That's what I say about our high school activities, but football is a great example of that. So we're up in participation over the last 4 years. Each of the last years, the last 4, we've increased the number of participants. We have more schools who are offering football each of the last 4 years as well. Doesn't always transition into many more teams, but they are co-oping or finding ways to get programs started, because a football program is a big program to add in. So if we can get a connection and we can get it started, eventually, hopefully, then we can spin off and have our own teams. But I would agree completely that we are in a very good place. The way that it's represented, the excitement in a lot of different levels in Minnesota relative to football. I think all of that goes into it. But this is still that special opportunity to compete for your school, for your community, be a part of a really special experience at the high school level. So yeah, I think I would agree 100% that we're in a good place and getting better.
Is it just me, or does it seem like that the referee shortage that we've talked about over the last 5 years doesn't quite seem as dire right now? We don't see a truckload of Thursday games, as at least I don't see them, or Saturday games. Are we getting to a better place? Here we are 4 years after COVID. Are we getting to a better place where we have enough referees to bring Friday night lights back to Friday night lights?
Yeah, I think there's great evidence of that. So I just had a conversation with Jason Nickleby, who is the director of our officiating services here at the league, and said, Jason, I know we're going to talk about this a little bit. Anything new or different that you're seeing? Because I'm seeing the same thing you are,
Yeah.
Randy, that we are more consistent in offering those contests. At the same time, our schools are doing some things where they want some Saturday afternoon homecomings and things like that. We've seen some of that take place. So I think the creativity that came in has sponsored some new ideas. But our numbers are better in officials. We have the most registered and certified officials that we've had in over 14 years. And a lot of folks don't know that. I think
great.
there's a caveat to that we always have to be aware of, is that those numbers have grown rather quickly. And as a result, many of those officials may not have had the years of under varsity level to really, hone that craft. And so it does take some time to feel confident and to have, what I would call a requisite number of snaps to be really ready for that level. But our goal is to keep those we have, continue to add in underneath, and then continue to bring them in with some more seasoning and some more training and experience. But you're 100% right that we have more than we've had in quite some time. It has meant for far less adjustments in contests. Those are really disruptive. Football has a unique practice schedule throughout the week and all of that. And to all of a sudden find out on a Wednesday that, you're going to play tomorrow instead of Friday would be a major change for our schools. So we want to get back to predictable and get those schedules the way we'd like to have them.
And it's not just the varsity schedule. It's the JV, it's the sophomores, it's the freshmen. All of those things all work in concert. So when the varsity schedule's out of whack, then also the other levels are also having to have issues and find ways to get through that. I know that the 2-year scheduling cycle is up. Next year will be a whole new look at schedules. Where are we with that? What do you think it worked from a perspective of? I know 5A the really good teams played the really good teams for the first time in a long time, and geography was a little bit thrown out the window. The travel was a little bit more lenient. Let's go play the better teams. Do you think we'll see that again, or what's the feeling from the high school league?
Yeah, I think that what we will see is more similar to this year. Not
Okay.
major change from this year, but one of the key aspects is that well that we create districts, and the districts create the schedule for the teams that are in their district. We brought those districts to a higher level, a higher number of teams, which creates greater flexibility, which then probably allowed for some of that pairing of teams maybe you want to see match up in a regular season contest, right? And for some teams to be able to provide some opportunities to be successful. We know that on that side of things, when a team has been down for some time, it is more likely that team might fold up and not exist anymore. So we need to continue to try and find ways to have that equitable competition and be able to align them with one another that fits well. At the same time, we recognize that the results are going to bear out within the QRF and those kinds of things. If you're a team that's not as strong and you play some better teams, those might be some lopsided scores. But the fewer of those we have, the better experience everyone has. And our good teams are going to get through to the end regardless. And so having them have good competition throughout the course of the regular season is pretty key.
Well, I thought it was a banner year for high school football in Minnesota. We see that with not just the competition on the field. The sportsmanship was fantastic from my perspective, from what I saw. We see kids getting opportunities to play college football more and more these days from Minnesota high school football. So I think all in all, it was a really good year. Erich, thanks so much for doing this. I appreciate it. And I hope we can continue this dialogue each year that I do this podcast, because I think it's important that we get a kind of a bow to wrap up what the prep football season looks like in Minnesota. Thanks for doing this.
Thank you for all you do for high school sports and high school football in particular. Really appreciate it.
We all have go-tos, right? Well, mine is Culver's, and all you have to do is look at my social media for proof. I eat at Culver's almost every day, and I love matching my order number to a star athlete. But more than anything else, I love the food. It's fresh, it's delicious, and it's comfort. I feel good after stopping at Culver's. The people are friendly, the food is made to order, and it just makes me happy, truly. So if you're looking for your go-to, I have a recommendation: Culver's. And our Culver's Player of the Week is number 17, Luke Ryerson of Eastridge, who set an all-star football game record, making a 57-yard field goal to end the game. Luke is headed to kick, punt, and play baseball at the University of Minnesota. Congratulations. And my thanks to Culver's for their support this season. And also a special thank you to Aquarius Home Services and True Stone Financial for their support of this show as well. I really do appreciate it. I also want to thank everyone, coaches, players, administrators, and especially the fans who supported the Minnesota Football Coaches Association Tackle Cancer campaign this fall. The money is in, and it's a new record. As of Christmas, the total is $623,899. Incredible. Thank you. In 13 years, the MFCA has raised well over $4.1 million. The money will support cancer research and patient aid in Minnesota through the Randy Shaver Cancer Research and Community Fund, which operates currently on a 6% budget, meaning 94 cents of every dollar goes to support Minnesota's cancer community. Thank you. It's no secret, I love Minnesota high school football. I love everything about it. Friday Night Lights are special for so many reasons, but my first thought is community. We are so lucky to live in a state which celebrates sport and all that it does for young people. I hope this show, all 23 episodes, and our live Class 6A selection show in October showcase that for you. Thank you. So for producer Alex Algan and the great folks here at Talk North, thanks for watching and listening. And I'll see you late July as we crank this podcast up again. And I can't wait.